Ellensburg, Washington. Just the name evokes imagery of sleepy pine roads, candlelit homes, and the sound of choir bells echoing down quiet Sunday mornings. It was the kind of town where people didn't lock their doors, where neighbors gathered for potlucks, and where the church was not just a spiritual hub but a cornerstone of community life. At the very heart of Ellensburg stood St. Matthew's Church, a towering structure with blue stained glass windows and an ancient oak cross that watched over the town like a silent guardian. Generations of families had worshipped there. Weddings, baptisms, funerals, it all happened within those hallowed walls. To most, St. Matthew's was sacred ground. And presiding over it all was Deacon Harold Whitmore. Tall, well-spoken, with a head full of silver hair and a voice like velvet, Harold was loved. Adored, even. He offered guidance during crises, food to the hungry, and warmth to the lonely. He knew everyone's names, their stories, their sins. But behind the robes and reverence, there were shadows. Whispers never spoken aloud. Parents who noticed their daughters' unease after late-night choir practices. Young boys who abruptly quit Sunday school with tearful excuses. But in a town built on trust and tradition, who would dare accuse the deacon? Then, one late autumn evening in 2013, something changed. A streak of blood, a mere smudge, really, was found on the pavement near the church's rear exit. Faint, almost invisible, yet undeniable. It led toward a door no one remembered being used in years, the basement door. What was behind that door would unravel 30 years of lies. It would expose not just a man's hidden atrocities, but the chilling cost of blind faith. At True Crime Hub, we invite you to walk with us down the blood trail, because what lies beneath the sanctuary is more terrifying than anything imagined in confession. Harold Whitmore's story begins long before Ellensburg. Born in 1954 in the colder industrial parts of Spokane, Washington, Harold grew up in a modest household with strict parents. His father, Henry, was a steel mill worker with calloused hands and a short temper. His mother, Margaret, taught Sunday school and clung fiercely to scripture. From a young age, Harold was caught between fire and grace. His father demanded perfection, while his mother demanded piety. It shaped him. By age 8, he could recite entire chapters of Proverbs. By 10, he was helping lead youth Bible study. By 14, he was delivering eulogies that moved grown men to tears. But those closest to Harold noticed an eerie stillness about him. He never cried, not even at his grandmother's funeral. He never seemed truly joyful. He watched people more than he interacted with them. Teachers praised his intellect. Classmates avoided his intensity. When Harold turned 20, he enrolled at the Evergreen Theological Seminary. There, he became immersed in theology, psychology, and philosophy. He earned a reputation as a brilliant student, though aloof and severe. Some classmates recalled that Harold spoke of sin not as a human flaw but as a disease to be eradicated. He graduated with honors and, after a brief stint in Seattle, arrived in Ellensburg in 1982. St. Matthew's was on the verge of collapse, spiritually and structurally. But Harold resurrected it. He initiated food drives, marriage counseling, youth mentorship programs, and even funded repairs from his own pocket. The church blossomed under his leadership. Harold's sermons were not just biblical, they were magnetic. He could hold a congregation's attention for hours. People began to confide in him things they wouldn't even admit to their spouses. He was their shepherd, their counselor, their protector, and he wielded that trust like a scalpel. In 1987, 16-year-old Emily Rhodes vanished after an evening choir practice. She'd recently confided in her best friend that she was uncomfortable being alone with Deacon Harold but didn't elaborate. Her disappearance sent shockwaves through the town. Flyers were posted. Search parties organized. Harold delivered a tearful sermon urging the community to pray. No one suspected him. Why would they? 3 years later, Lisa Gutierrez went missing after volunteering at the church's food pantry. Then came 14-year-old Rachel Chung, 17-year-old Hannah Lutz, 13-year-old Brittany Shaw. 5 girls in a decade, all involved with St. Matthew's, all seemingly vanishing without a trace. Parents began pulling their children from church groups. Harold addressed the congregation with firmness and sorrow. "Fear is the enemy of faith," he declared, "and we must not allow the darkness to win." The town listened. They trusted him. But local librarian Annette Lawson kept a diary of every girl who disappeared. She noticed patterns, overlapping choir rosters, confessional meetings, Harold's one-on-one mentorships. She reported it to the police. They thanked her and shelved the note. It wasn't until she died in a car crash in 2007 that her diary was found and finally read. The custodian, Terence Baylor, was a quiet man. Former military, meticulous about order. When he saw the blood stain on the pavement near the rear entrance, he took a photo. Then he checked the door. Rusted shut. But behind it, he heard something, a faint metallic clink, like a chain brushing concrete. He reported it to the police. They ignored it. So he went back. Night after night. He took more photos. Finally, on a stormy night in October, he pried the door open with a crowbar. He vomited almost immediately. Inside was a small concrete room. Chains bolted to the wall. Faded drawings. Bones. And in the corner, a wooden chest. The police returned the next morning. What they found inside would haunt them forever. There were 24 VHS tapes, each marked with a girl's name and a date. They began as interviews. Harold asking girls about their sins, their family lives, their doubts. Then the recordings grew darker. The sermons turned into rituals. Chants. The tapes showed Harold wearing ceremonial robes, reciting scripture as he administered atonement. Experts later declared the tapes evidence of ritualistic abuse with underlying psychosexual motives masked in theology. One tape shocked even the most seasoned profiler. It showed Harold with a young boy, Sammy Davis, who had disappeared in 1995. That was the first time authorities realized his victims weren't limited to young girls. Harold's monologues became more deranged. The church was built on sacrifice. I simply continued the tradition. When news broke, the town fell into chaos. Some refused to believe it. Others rioted. St. Matthew's was vandalized. Support groups formed. Protesters and pilgrims flocked to Ellensburg. Harold was charged with 18 counts of murder, 32 counts of abuse, and countless federal violations. The trial lasted 8 months. Survivors testified. DNA evidence was presented. The tapes were shown. Harold remained silent throughout. When asked if he had remorse, he replied, "I only regret they didn't understand what I was saving them from." The church was sealed, then sold, then left to rot. A memorial garden was built across the street. Victims' names were etched in stone. But healing was slow. Former parishioners sought therapy. Some left town. Others turned to activism. Terence was awarded for bravery, but struggled with PTSD. And beneath it all, a question remained. How could this happen for so long? In prison, Harold began writing. Letters to the media. Religious groups. Survivors. Other sites. Other followers. Authorities reopened 12 cold cases from neighboring towns. The FBI is still investigating. This wasn't just a story about a small-town deacon. It was a story about unchecked power, about systems that protect abusers, about the silence of complicity. Congress held hearings. The Vatican issued statements. Other victims across the country came forward. St. Matthew's became a symbol of warning, of grief, of accountability. If this story shook you, don't look away. Speak up. Advocate. Ask your institutions, schools, churches, camps, what protections they have in place. Demand transparency. If you've experienced abuse, there is help. You are not alone. Visit our description for verified resources. And subscribe to True Crime Hub. Because telling these stories isn't just about the past, it's about protecting the future.